It is 7:12 a.m. Pacific time, in case you couldn't tell by the sun outside. May 29th, 2017. Exactly 100 years ago today, John F. Kennedy was born in Brookline, Massachusetts. And I was thinking very hard and long about whether or not I wanted to write a speech or give some prepared remarks. But there's a level of sincerity I think I convey when I speak off the cuff and without any type of direction on paper as to where I want to go with this. So, roughly 3 or 4 years ago, it was in the latter part of 2013 as we were getting ready for the 50th anniversary of the assassination. I became more politically involved in just research and reading and looking up figures for whom held office decades and centuries before I was born. And Kennedy became my favorite out of all of those I read about for a number of reasons. And one was that it was at a time where I contemplated joining the United States Navy. And that was really bolstered by learning about his own active service. It's something that came to my mind beforehand, but it still didn't have the same level of just what I could attain being so evident in the sense that I can sit here and join any military rank, but I felt inspired by the fact that someone who wanted to serve or did serve in the same branch of the military was able to achieve a higher office, such as representative or senator or obviously president. Now, the thing that always bothered me about Kennedy's story, and it's sad when you think about the shortest lived president, obviously the youngest ever elected, and the legacy that he really embodies, I think for most people, or at least what I feel most people view when they see him, are what was and what could have been. So people will cite his speeches, such as the one challenging the U.S. to get ahead in the moon race, the civil rights address from 4 or 5 months before he was assassinated back in June of 1963, the inaugural address, letting the word go forward. The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. There are multiple addresses that he gave that people find inspirational and will listen to. You know, I'm a person who has seen many of these speeches, and some of whom I can quote verbatim, at least to some extent. I can't give you a full off the cuff transcript, but this was done mainly when I was in high school. And there, as I described in one of my books, there were different times where you have people who, will call you strange or bizarre because you feel a compulsion to remember the leaders of your country and remember them fondly and regularly. And apparently that bothers people. But it didn't bother me because I knew that the individuals I was remembering, such as President Kennedy, such as his brother, who was also martyred for the two of you that don't know that, such as MLK, such as Malcolm X, they were figures that I thought of in a very positive light, and that I had no problem giving 10 minutes of my time a day to just either watch one of their speeches or read a little bit about them back in late 2013, early 2014. And all of that I really feel is tied more to Kennedy than anyone else. Out of any politician, I think JFK was the one that triggered for me the political interest. And that was really something that I don't think I've ever acknowledged just in hindsight until today, as I'm sitting here speaking. Now, for the what could have been part, as I said earlier, youngest to die was only 2 years into his term. Even if he'd lost re-election, he still wouldn't have gotten out of the presidency until January of 1965. And it's so sad to think about how he had all these health issues that a lot of people would speculate likely would have killed him anyway, but that his death could not be one for which was relieving of pain. It had to be one that was consumed by pain with these bullets being loaded into him. And the worst part about it is, even though he suffers from this more than Lincoln, because Lincoln people will look at and read up all about him rather. But with Kennedy, there's this fascination. His brother, and to an extent, Martin Luther King suffered from it as well, where we can't really just give emphasis to their life. We have to have these documentaries about their deaths, and sometimes those are more occurring than the ones about his life. And that's always so bothersome to me, because this isn't a person who was president for 2.5 years and did nothing. All the more reason for why I'm so irritated every time I see these documentaries and it's not the fact that they do that, it's just how often they are and how they seem to be the only thing I just see on TV in regards to him. I don't recall that being the case for Reagan. And, Hinckley isn't exactly a figure for whom we should be forgetting, especially since he got out. But when I think about his life, and the earlier parts of just how nothing past, I want to say 1944, so that last 19 years of his life, nothing past that was ever planned. We people forget about Joseph Jr. and how he was meant to take the family role of being the standard bearer for whom they could rest their aspirations of the presidency on. And now after he died in World War II, the possibility of achieving what Joseph Sr. wanted fell on to the second son, JFK. And it's the fact that that scenario encompasses exactly what I'm conveying here, where I say what could have been if Joseph Jr. survived, and what was in that JFK survived and lived to become president. And we've seen that, and a lot of people feel a special affinity for that time period. You don't see a president now who has a great relationship with the press, who answered questions in full. Go back and listen to one of his press conferences. The entire time they ask him a question, he'll answer it back, he'll give some information. You really have a feeling of genuine response when it comes to how he reacts to those questions, or how he did in the past. And it's sadly missing today, and it's been missing for a while. Now, you'll have people who will talk about his moral character, oh, these women. But so what? You know, I don't recall the presidency stating that you have to be some great family man to be a accomplished leader. I don't believe that at all. And while there is evidence to suggest that some of that may be true, it still shouldn't be the defining aspect of his legacy. I think his legacy needs to stay entrenched in politics for what was and what could have been. That we need to remember that all of these different events, such as the building of the Berlin Wall, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the space race, they're all things that tie directly back to him. Even segments of the Cold War, along with his brother. Um, this isn't a legacy for which we can stack on how he died, or who he was romantically involved with, or what his relationships were. It needs to be entirely built around who he was while president, who he was while senator, and who he was as a service member, as well as a congressman. Public service was his life. And we need to do the service of remembering that as opposed to these scandals and any other type of innuendo that occurred, as well as that tragedy that claimed him on November 22nd, 1963. So, as I get ready to end my remarks here, I just want to say that no politician when I was 15 or 16 that I look up to more than JFK. And even though that's moved to his brother, I still retain that very positive view of him. When people lay out their criticisms, they can say what they want, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it because I know the real story and I know the person for whom those things are being alleged would not do that. And I know this because I've for years gathered as much information as I could. Um, and I'm not going to allow one person's perspective or five people's claims to change what I know. So I thank anyone who thought about him today, who considered the fact that it's his 100th. What can we do to remember what his words were? I'm very grateful for that. And I really hope that whenever any of the rest of us turn 100, whether we're here or not, that we're also remembered and given consideration by people who might not have known us, but feel there's a special occasion there. Because truly, that's what most of us would want, being remembered in a positive way. So, thank you for watching and have a good day.